Good morning. Let us start today's meeting. I hope that you will join soon. We are in the process of starting a module number 4. Here, we have to tell you a few points about the plane stress and strain before we go for the more details and more new or complicated chapters, portion of the chapters. You know, there is, we have considered so far a varieties of problems in which general three-dimensional problems can be reduced, and everywhere we have started with three-dimensional problem means we are considering stresses in three mutually perpendicular direction in a rectangular coordinate axis, say along x-axis, along xy, along xz axis. Like x-axis you have tensile and compressive stress, yz axis shear stress, and zy axis shear stress accordingly. And we have constituted 6 constitutive equation between the stress and strain, which contains of individual directions itself, which contains around 36 constants. And we have taken a lot of assumptions to reduce this number of these constant into 2 only. Now, but these three-dimensional problems can be reduced into its simplest form. That is, we can consistently one-dimensional. We can consistently use one-dimensional problem, and consequently, we are left with only uniaxial stress and uniaxial strain only. No shear stress and no shear strain accordingly. So, mathematically speaking, of these 6 components, only one is present here, sigma x, say sigma x of sigma z, and all other rest are 0 itself. The deformations also essentially only one dimensions, other deformations being negligibly small. Well, some examples of this type of stresses are the rods and wear ropes, where axial compression, rods and wear ropes, where axial compression in short columns and shearing stress in rivets. And the one common factor in all these problems is the consistency of stress from point to point. We have to understand the stress is same in every point throughout the length of the beam and throughout the cross section of the beam. That is the most common and important assumption we have to use in case of one-dimensional stress itself. If we cut a section normal to the direction of the loading, we'll have the stress is uniform throughout on all the points of this cross section itself. Because of this St. Venant's effects and all sections are away from the loading point, the average stress can be calculated by dividing the load with the cross section. So the scientists St. Venant's say that all these sections are far away from the loading point itself. So you can say that average stress, every cross section, we can take average stress, and we can shape this average resisting stress is the load divided by the area of the cross section itself. Now we'll consider the special cases. Now we consider the special cases where out of 6 stress component, only 5 is 0, and the 6 is constant over the area. So this may happen either due to shape of the structural elements, that is a long thin wire with a lead hanging from one end and fixed at the other end, or due to nature of loading, that is temperature stress at that place that affects. And all the molecules in similar way creating uniformity of stresses. Sometimes or more, sometimes or more complex method like triaxial stresses can also be tackled by using the method discussed here. Now, what is uniaxial tensile compression? Just we have discussed. As we discussed in the case, the actual standard element, structural elements, is represented by a one-dimensional element of stress and strain. And so only one-dimensional element of stress and strain are considered only in this significant direction, say J. thus sigma z and epsilon z, and considering the remaining stresses and strains are neglected. Following are neglected. Following are the examples here. Let us discuss two examples to clarify the matter itself. Now, just 1 second. Here, what we deduce here, in a certain field, certain oil field, a very long steel drill pipe got stuck in hard clay at an unknown depth. You see, for the boring of steel oil fields, we use a drill. That is drilling pipe. That is not familiar to our known drill, but it acts according to the more or less in the same principle of the helix of the drill, which we are using in the machine shop. And here, this drill went for drilling the earth. Will got stuck in hard clay of an unknown depth. So what happens? A sample experiment was carried out at to find the leg depth of the drill pipe was subjected to a large upward force, and it was found that pipe came out elastically. And it was found that pipe came out elastically. Just 1 second. What we find here, I'm repeating again, for a certain oil field, a long steel drill, which is meant for drilling the earth, got stuck in a hard clay at an unknown depth itself. A simple experiment was carried out to find the depth where it is got stuck. The drill pipe was subject to a large upward force, and it was found that the pipe came out elastically. Drill pipe was subject to a large upward force, yes, and it was found that pipe came out elastically by 1 meter and elongated by 0.004 meter in a cage length of 20 centimeter. Assuming the pipe to be of constant area, that what we find the depth of the clay means neglect other resistance offered by other area itself. So what is given here? We are exerting a force, say P. Let's explain. What we are doing, we are exerting a force equal to P itself, and the area cross section of the pipe is A, and the length of the total pipe from the ground level up to the clay bed where it is stuck is equal to L. So what will happen? The delta L, the elongation or contraction of the pipe will be given by P into L by A into E, or P by AE multiplied by L, where L is the length of the pipe from ground level to the clay bed level, and P is the load required to drill, and A is the area of the pipe itself, and delta L is the contraction which takes place as the drill is struck in the mud itself. So we can have the equation delta L by L is equal to P divided by A into E. Now, we have taken that for a cage length of 20 centimeters, say, not the full length of the drill, but up to a length of 20 centimeter or equal to 0.2 meter, called, say, small l, the extension is 0.004 millimeter. So we apply our Hooke's law again to this small length of the pipe. Small is only the gauge length. What will happen? We'll have to use the same formula, like delta L P by A into L, where P remains unchanged, A is the cross section of the other pipe remains unchanged, E is the Young's modulus of the pipe mixture that remains unchanged. But delta L and L is changing. So we are putting the delta L by L here for this up to this gauge length, which is equal to P, again equal to P by AE, where P and AE are both are constant, both are same, and here in this equation. But delta L, these two delta L are different. So delta capital L divided by capital L is equal to delta L by delta small l, where we know the capital L will be equal to delta small l into delta capital divided by delta L, where delta L is the length of the pipe when it is stuck to it. So here we are smalling the gauge length, which is equal to 0.2 or 20 centimeter or equal to 0.2 meter. The del that is delta L is equal to act up to the length of act 1 meter itself, assuming the pipe to be constant. Just pipe came out elastically by 1 meter. We have assumed that the pipe came out by elastically by 1 meter itself. So we are putting this length, L small l is equal to 1 meter, and that contraction it takes place, it is equal to the length of the drill, which for a gauge length is equal for a gauge length of 20 centimeter, the drill is contracted by an amount elongated by about 0.004 centimeter. So we have to put both of them and 0.004 centimeter. So in order to convert the meter, we have to write it down 0.00404, which is at numerator is 0.2. The amount of the gauge length which comes out, and out of 1 meter of length itself. So thus the capital L is equal to 5,000 meter or 5 kilometer or 5 kilometer from the top of the earth surface to the hard mud bed itself. So thus we have got this problem where you can use this only the uniaxial stress formulas of uniaxial stress itself. Let us go to another problem. What we have, problem number 2. What we have, this is essentially a determinable problem, and we can start from free end to calculate the force itself. It is shown in this figure here, for the force here from B to C. From B to C, this is this force, and it is consistent and equal to the end root, that is equal to 40. What we see here, we are having load here at equal to 4 ton at the end T, and acting downwards, we have another load at the point C, which is equal to 1 ton at a distance 30 centimeter for this end, and we have another load which is acting upwards at a distance of 90 centimeter for the lower end itself. So what happens? From B to C, the force is here consistent, means from B to C, the force is consistent equal to total 5 meter itself. It's equal to end load 1 ton and 4 ton. That is at C, it is increases to 5 ton, and at B, it is acting only up to 3 ton itself. Because up to B, we have at the point here, this is equal to total 5 ton, and here upward load is acting at 2 ton. So at this junction, we are adding downward load equal to 3 ton, which is acting downwards. Here at the from this to C, both this 5 ton load is acting, so it is 5 ton, and here 3 plus 1 ton, only 3 only this 4 ton load is acting here. Thus, KB, the load into length, your area into E, we know load is given as at AB is only 3 ton. Load delta B means length at the point B is equal to the effect of 3 ton into the length is equal to 90 centimeter, and divided by the area into Young's modulus, which is given as 2 into 10 to the power 6. So we got delta B, the elongation is equal to 13.5 to the power minus 2 centimeter. And for BC, we are having the length for CD, we are having the length delta B plus load into length by area into AB. Same problem, delta B we have to add with this equation itself, and it will get for 13.5 into 15 into the power 2. And after D, we are having this total length is dealt here is the delta C, means this load here, this elongation here plus the elongation between C to D. So it is calculated like this here. And thus delta D, thus delta D is the elongation of throughout the length. At the end is equal to addition of all this length, which is equal to 0.345 centimeter itself. Well, up to this moment, we can show a few examples how we can calculate the uniaxial forces phenomenon for our practical problem here. Now we will get the axis symmetrical problem itself. Just 1 second. Now, what is axis symmetrical problem? Let us discuss. Now, what is axis symmetrical problem? There are so many problems in practical importance are carried out are concerned with solids of revolution. So we have to deal with the items which can be defined as solids of revolution. What is this? Examples of solids of revolution are, say, circular cylinder or circular spheres subjected to uniform internal or external pressures. And the axis of this particular cylinders can be reduced as z-axis itself. The deformation being symmetrical with the z-axis is convenient to use cylindrical coordinates itself. Solids of revolution are cylinders, circular cylinders and let that deformation being symmetrical with the respective z-axis itself. Let its deformation is symmetrical with respect to z-axis. Instead of we have to use, instead of rectangular coordinates, we are supposed to use cylindrical coordinate axis. Since the deformation being cylindrical with respect to the z-axis, it is convenient to use since the deformation is symmetrical about the axis itself, the stress components will not depend on theta itself. Let Since the deformation is symmetrical about z-axis, theta theta, we don't need to explain. We don't have to depend. We don't depend on theta itself.